Kentucky and South Carolina. Going to be a real good game. 3:30 Eastern, ABC, Kroger Field. Kentucky yesterday was a 9.5-point favorite. That has since gone up to 10.5 against South Carolina. Kentucky looked pretty sharp in that opening game. Now it was Southern Miss, and, they didn't play a full 4 quarters, but nonetheless, Brock Vandagriff, he was spinning it. Berrien Brown, Dane Key getting involved. Demi Sumo Kongbe looked good toting the rock. This one, though, against South Carolina, it can't help but feel like it's got a little personal vibe to it for Coach Stoops. Because remember now, the last couple of years, there's been, I don't know if it's been so directly pointed at Shane Beamer, but he's more or less had his opinion on Shane Beamer and the way that he carries himself and talking about, putting on a hat and sunglasses and dancing and all that. And then Shane Beamer in the locker room after beating Kentucky throws on the hat, throws on the sunglasses. I personally loved it. I loved the vibe overall, and I would go to war for Shane Beamer, period, just because of the way that he's a player's coach. But even with that being said, I think Kentucky now has a certain edge to them, especially in this game, especially now going 0 for 2 in their last 2 tries. South Carolina fans, Kentucky fans, make sure you're subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. It's our time. It's college football season. We want y'all a part of this. I want to let y'all know also the Hard Count is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy, super easy to use, super easy to play, super easy to withdraw your winnings. All you got to do to play Prize Picks, you select 2 or more player projections, pick more or less on those projections, you're off to the races, you got yourself a lineup. Now, if you want to get some promo funds to get yourself started, you redeem code HARDCOUNT. When you play $5 in lineups, get yourself $50 in promo funds. Again, redeem code HARDCOUNT. $5 in lineups will get you $50 in promo funds. Let's have a great season. Back to this game prediction. Now for South Carolina, last week against ODU, had to maybe sweat that one out a little bit more than you wanted to. The Lenoris Sellers era has started in Columbia. Looked solid, then looked phenomenal, but looked solid. Had some first-year starter mistakes, but it is what it is. For South Carolina now, you can put all that ODU talk to rest if you go out and beat a team like Kentucky, who I think a lot of people think is kind of a sneaky team in the SEC. So I'll leave it at that. South Carolina's plan A is going to be run the football, mix it up with how you run the football, but essentially stay on schedule, give it to Rocket Sanders, Lenora Sellers, pull it whenever they try and dive to crash that inside zone game, and we're going to get down that way. We are going to be so versatile doing the same thing, and we're going to be better at that than your defense against that. Pretty straightforward. They're not going to be overwhelmingly, I don't believe, complex in the pass game. They're going to try and dictate terms by running the football. Now for Kentucky, I don't know how much that's going to work because Deion Walker is a smooth 6'6", 345-pound athlete for them on the defensive line. Kentucky allowed, I think it was somewhere in the range of 5 yards against Southern Miss. It was a ridiculous number, whatever it was. Don't quote me on that rushing number stat against Southern Miss. They look great against Southern Miss stopping the run. Now, stopping Southern Miss and stopping South Carolina with a quarterback in Lenora Sellers who's 6'3", 240, probably different tasks if you catch my drift there, but that's going to be a very big matchup. Because if South Carolina can run the football, well, okay, we got a whole different way to look at this game. And South Carolina may very well go into Kroger Field and leave with a dub if you can't stop them on the ground. However, if Deion Walker has anything to say about it, and that front seven of Kentucky along with Georgia transfer linebacker Jamal Dumas-Johnson has anything to say about it, this game gets a little bit interesting, okay? Because then you force South Carolina to have to throw the football, and that's a whole other can of worms that we don't know what that would look like, quite frankly. So again, the spread is up to now 10.5. We'll see what it looks like at game time. It'd be very easy to just pick the double-digit favorite, right? There's not a whole lot of, nuance or skill involved in that. If South Carolina were to win this football game, how would that happen? I think you would have to do what I just said, be efficient on offense, be able to run the football. Maybe more specifically, I think you'd have to have something in the pass game as well. Vandrevis Jacobs looked pretty solid against ODU. We'll see how much they feed him the football. Nicholas Harbor is, let's be real. He's a Olympic sprinter playing receiver for South Carolina. If you can bring him up to speed, involve him in the game plan, and allow him to just maximize his athletic gifts, things could get interesting. That's kind of the whole thing around this for South Carolina. Be able to be efficient on offense and have something in the pass game to set up your run game, or at least keep Kentucky from totally keying on your run game. Now, in addition to that, South Carolina, I think, to win this football game on the road, probably needs to find a way to spot themselves a possession or two. Could see some Beamer ball. The thing that I'm looking at is South Carolina's defensive line. I know it was ODU, but like Dylan Stewart, SEC Defensive Lineman of the Week, he's a true freshman. I mean, absolute havoc wreaker off the edge. Had a sack and a half, I believe, last week against ODU. Like, he is one of those guys you point to and say, okay, if we're going to win this game, you have to be special. Maybe it's not just him. Maybe it's other pieces on that South Carolina defense. But, like, you have to disrupt Brock Vandagriff. Because Kentucky's plan is going to be pretty straightforward. Much like I mentioned South Carolina being pretty straightforward in what they want to do, the same thing is true for Kentucky. They want to get the ball in space to Dane Key and Barry and Brown. And then when you're moving side to side trying to keep up with them, they're going to give the ball to DSK, and he's going to make you pay getting downhill. All right, like Brock Vandagriff, I think, was one of the more under-the-radar gets via the portal for Kentucky, just because you can't get on the field at Georgia when Carson Beck, the number one quarterback in America, is in front of you. Shouldn't it say anything about how good he actually is? Brock Vandagriff, a 5-star in his own right. My take here is I think Lenoris Sellers and Rocket Sanders will absolutely have a chance to dictate the tempo of this game, but with it being in Kroger Field, with what I mentioned, Deion Walker, and how good that Kentucky front seven is, and also, quite frankly, the concerns I have about South Carolina's secondary. We got ODU going bombs way over them. Like, I think the matchup South Carolina needs to win this football game, I don't see them right now. So I think Kentucky wins. I think Kentucky covers. I think the score is 27-14 Kentucky, and they get their first win in 3 tries against South Carolina and Shane Beamer and company. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.